as the most dangerous terrorist threat to our homeland is white supremacy.
You know, I hear that everything in the last couple of days is going rather smoothly.
The lunatics who won't take any of the COVID vaccines. Joe Biden, President of the United States, may have said the worst thing that any president has ever said during a Howard University commencement speech. Kamala Harris says the border is going smoothly, all things considering. Is she right? And remember the whole COVID thing and how everybody said one thing and turned out to be entirely wrong about it? We'll talk about all of that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Thanks so much for tuning in. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
One.
Here we go.
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Ooh, hi! From the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is Monday, May 15th, the year of our Lord 2023. Hope you had a fun and happy Mother's Day, birthing person chest feeder day, as so many would like to call it. Over the weekend, a lot of stuff happened. We are in graduation season, and if you're not familiar with graduation season, we talked about this a lot last year. You start seeing all of the political people and a lot of the newsmakers, so to speak, start giving commencement addresses and saying some wacky, off-the-wall, dumb stuff. That was not deviant from the case last Friday. Was it last Friday or Saturday? One of the days over the weekend, after we did our show on Friday, Joe Biden was giving a commencement address at Howard University and possibly, I would love to hear in the comment section, possibly said the worst thing that a president has ever said. And by that, I mean, a lot of things are encompassed when I talk about the worst, most cynical, divisive, untrue, factually. Holy cow. I'm going to play you the clip, but this clip has been making the rounds. You've probably seen it on a bunch of different news shows over the weekend. But I also want to read several lines from his speech that a lot of people haven't seen yet. Because he goes even further to double down on the thing that he said is apparently not being as divisive as it actually was. Again, the President of the United States speaking at Howard University, saying some of the most untrue, divisive, brash things I think a president has ever said. I want you to watch this, and then I want to read some of the other quotes that aren't getting nearly as much attention on the other side. Check it out. Watch this.
To stand up against the poison of white supremacy, as I did my inaugural address, to single out as the most dangerous terrorist threat to our homeland is white supremacy. And I'm not saying this because I'm at a black HBCU. I say it wherever I go.
I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, it actually is because he was at a black HBCU. Okay, so first things first, let's just break that down really quick. Joe Biden says that white supremacy is the most dangerous terrorist thing in this country. I have never met a white supremacist in the sense of somebody actually who believes that sort of thing. What the problem is from a lefty standpoint is that these people will call anything white supremacy. If you turn your homework in on time, that's white supremacy. So putting those pieces together doesn't really bode well for the president. If turning your homework in on time or if being on time to a meeting is white supremacy, as many lefties have claimed, I'm not being hyperbolic here, then what the president is saying is that the biggest terrorist threat is being on time, which is white supremacy, among many other things that have been claimed to be white supremacy. The problem is that so many people on the president's side of things have said, this is white supremacy, this is white supremacy, this is... Okay, if we're talking about actual white supremacy, I don't think it's as big of an issue as the president is making it seem. And also then to say that to a bunch of young black students graduating from college, saying that the most dangerous thing in this country is the people that hate you. Yikes. Let me read some more of what he said. Let's be clear. There are those who want, those are those who don't want to see you. There are those who don't, oh, sorry. This is Monday morning, I can't read. Let's start over. Let's be clear. There are those who don't see you, who don't want this future, Biden said. I'm sorry, is that, am I missing a major Republican talking point? Is there any Republican, mainstream or otherwise, saying that we don't want black kids to go to college? Is the president making that claim? And then again, to say that to a bunch of young, impressionable people, something that is not happening, and saying that there are people out there who don't want this to happen. I mean, I guess in theory, somewhere, somebody with no voice and no audience might theoretically possibly be saying that, but if you have to issue that many caveats, I feel like your point shouldn't be made then. Saying to a bunch of impressionable young people, alluding to the fact that they don't want this future. The future of black people graduating from college. Literally nobody thinks that. So, Mr. President, why are you being so divisive? He goes on to say, there are those who demonize and pit people against one another. That is rich. Let me go on. There are those who would do anything and everything, no matter how desperate or immoral, to hold on to power. Can the man hear himself talk? And again, I don't want to be this type of person that says everything is the worst or the best or this or that hyperbolic speech of, especially regarding to politics. But after having just said one of the most divisive things in political culture in a long time, maybe ever, he then says there are some people that will say anything to hold on to power. Which is what he just did while being in a position, re-election coming up, to want to try to hold on to power. Again, policy aside, politics aside, how I think about the president or what I think about his ideas, all of that aside, that's just idiotic. Because I think, but there's a bunch of people on the lefty side of the aisle. Let me see. I'm reading in this Politico statement. Despite some of the audience applause, Biden's message was not entirely well received. This is in Politico, by the way. They go on to say some of the people that have criticized him for it. But the bottom line is he objectively said something insanely divisive and just a flat-out freaking lie. There's some people who don't see you and don't want to see this future. Nobody thinks that. And then to go on and say that there are people out there that are trying to pit one another against each other. Okay, dude. That's like going to a dinner outing with friends. And then you go over to one person and say, hey, you go over to a female and say, hey, just so you know, Rebecca says that you are absurdly fat and she hates you. I'm just telling you that. I'm telling you that right now. That's what Rebecca said. She said that. And Rebecca didn't say that, by the way. But I told you, well, Rebecca said that you're absurdly fat, you're ugly, and she hates you. And also, just so you know, there are people out there saying incredibly divisive things in order to hold on to the power of the group at this dinner table. I mean, dude, again, policy and politics aside, that's just stupid. And the other thing, and we talked about this last week, the other thing is somebody wrote this speech for him. He's not speaking off the cuff here because he never speaks off the cuff because he can't because his brain is addled. Somebody wrote this out and thought that it would be a smart, wise thing for the President of the United States to say. Okay. I'll put a pin in that because I want to make sure we can move on and not ramble on and waste more time on that. Not waste more time, but I think you get the point here. Because I want to move on to somebody else in the executive branch who is as dumb, if not dumber, than the current president of the United States. Here's Kamala Harris. She says a lot of things. She's talking about the border specifically, but she says a lot of things regarding the border and how it's going, especially currently since Title 42 is no longer. She goes on to say a bunch of different things, but I want you to focus on what she says at the beginning because I think it's on there. The border is going smoothly. You're going to say there's no way that Kamala Harris said things at the border are going smoothly. Oh, but she did, friends. Oh, but she did. Check it out.
You know, I hear that everything in the last couple of days is going rather smoothly, given what the concerns were. And the bottom line, however, is that the issue of immigration falls squarely within the responsibility of the United States Congress.
That's correct and true. And I also want to talk about what she's talking about. The things at the border are going smoothly. Alejandro Mayorkas, who we'll bring on in just a second, America's most annoying, useless, nonsense person, said that, this is a quote, what is this? This is on ABC this week, said, in fact, over the past 2 days, the United States Border Patrol has seen approximately a 50% drop in the number of people encountered at the southern border as compared to the numbers earlier this week before Title 42 came to an end on midnight on Thursday. Oh my gosh. He said that it's fine. It's just fine, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently, it's okay. So what Kamala Harris heard was from Alejandro Mayorkas, who's trying to save his butt and keep his job, honestly, probably. And apparently he should report directly to Kamala Harris as she is the quote-unquote border czar. Remember, Kamala Harris was tasked with handling the border 2 years ago. So she's been in charge for 2 years, and her direct report, or at least should be, is Alejandro Mayorkas, the Homeland Security Secretary. He went on the cable news or the Sunday shows on the network TV and said, well, we've declined by 50%. All right. So just to give you some of those numbers, at the beginning of the week, Monday and Tuesday, we saw 10,000 and 11,000 respectively. Maybe it was Tuesday and Wednesday, but one of the 2 days of the week, 10,000, 11,000 respectively in one city and one border crossing. Just FYI, 1,000 people is a crisis, is an emergency. We had 10 times that on a couple of those days. So if 1,000 people is an emergency that requires desperate attention from those in charge, then 10,000 people is a tenfold emergency. At least that's how the math would work out. If then, on, I don't know, one other particular day later on in the week, 6,000 people come through, which again, remember, 1,000 people is an utter disaster, absolute emergency. If a day later on down the week comes in, well, 5,000 people come through. At least it wasn't 10, which is catastrophic. That's not a win, Secretary. But that is the thing that he is parroting, and then apparently Kamala Harris is now parroting, which brings us to this. A lot of people pointed out, how do you know Alejandro Mayorkas is lying? Well, his lips are moving. He's speaking, which is how you know that he's lying. He then went on to say this. Now, I want to preface this with the understanding that what he's saying is factually inaccurate. Now, I want you to couch this in a broader understanding of how the executive branch of the federal government is supposed to work. Right? In a normal company, you have the board of directors, and then you have the CEO. And the board kind of approves the broader scope ideas that represent the shareholders and are also in the best interest of the company as a whole, which I guess then also represents the shareholders. When you think about the federal government, you should think about it in the context of a board of directors and the CEO that is tasked with implementing the ideas and the wishes of the board of directors and the shareholders, right? That's the whole thing. So if you look at the federal government in that way, with Congress supposed to be, and there's some arguments on whether or not they are actually doing their job, which I would say they're not, but they're supposed to be the people that craft the laws, right? This is a remedial civics course here. The president then, and departments that fall underneath the executive branch, are supposed to enforce those laws. That being said, we have immigration laws. They exist. Nobody is denying that they exist. There are also international regulations that we abide by. None of those laws are being abided by right now. Congress has said, let's just use driving on a highway, for example. Congress has set a speed limit of 75 miles an hour. People are driving 120 miles an hour on the freeway, and the executive branch, who is tasked with making sure Congress's law is enforced, is just letting people drive like it's the Autobahn. Extrapolate that further to the border. We have pretty concrete border immigration laws. We accept a certain number of people per year. We are supposed to abide by international asylum seeking rules. Just so you know, too, and I feel like this is not said enough, we accept more people than anybody else in the world, right? More people immigrate here than anywhere else on planet Earth. So to say that we are uncompassionate is just factually inaccurate. But we have rules that say how many people are supposed to be here, and then no more. And the international asylum laws are such that if you enter a country, the first seeking asylum, the first country that you enter, you're supposed to apply for asylum there. Except for that's not the case. So know that before you watch this clip with Alejandro Mayorkas claiming the exact opposite, because he's not doing his job, and neither is the administration. Watch this.
What we call upon Congress to do, and what has been called upon Congress to do for more than 2 decades, is fix the broken immigration system. On day one, President Biden sent to Congress a proposal to do just that. What we are asking for is a fix, not to dismantle the system, which is what this latest proposal suggests.
So the problem with that is it's just not true at all. Maybe there are some, I don't know, formality tweaks with how people are processed, but other than that, we have rules already. So yes, it's up to Congress to craft those rules, but it's up to you to enforce the rules. So if you're not enforcing the rules, you can't blame Congress for the rules that they've given you. And it goes all the way up to the top. I know we blame Mayorkas a lot, but really it's Kamala Harris who's the border czar, but also the President of the United States for just allowing this sort of stuff to happen. Now, there's a lot of people in the comments, commenting on this on Twitter. Some of I should have pulled a picture from some of the photos that are being taken. But people are coming into the country and being processed. Remember the 1,500 troops from the U.S. military that went down to the border were not to stop people at the border. They were to process the people at the border. And what I mean by process that is they're given a court date to appear later on at some time somewhere. Now, how far are these court dates in advance, right? We're talking probably, 2 or 3 weeks, and then you show up and you get a decision on whether or not you can stay or you have to leave. That's how a normal country should operate. If we even have to do that, I would say keep people housed in a penitentiary. I don't know. What do you call it? It's not a jail, even though criminal immigration is illegal. But keep them housed in a secure facility until their asylum claim is met. That would seem like the reasonable way to do this, because then they can either stay or they have to leave. It's not how we're doing it. We are doing it in such a way where people are being handed pieces of paper, and there are photographs all over Twitter of this, where their court dates are in March of 2027. 4 years from now. Now, what happens in 4 years when you move to a place? Do you get gainful employment and possibly have children who are then anchor you here because they're American citizens? Don't a lot of things happen to where you have effectively what I'm saying is it's not fair to those people that were doing it, let alone the citizens of this country. If you're going to have a system, you need to have people housed in a place, and you need to process them quickly and orderly, and either decide, all right, you get to stay here, or you have to leave. It's not that hard. And I tweeted this morning. You have to fund the justice system to do that. You can't afford to have a backlog that is 4 to 5 to 10 years long in order for people to decide whether or not they are allowed to stay or not. You want to talk fixing broken immigration system, maybe what it is funding the judges in the justice system that will say yes or no to all of these people. Because at the end of the day, it seems like we have a processing problem, which means we have an executive branch problem, which means that we have a problem running the system that currently exists. Not that the system is broken, it's the fact that we can't handle it. Multiple failures on multiple levels. I'm looking at the time, and I want to move on to this because this is the big, long video that is making a lot of the rounds. Oh, no, did I not pull it into the system? I don't think I did yet. Here we go. So this doesn't really need a ton of explanation. Bottom line is this. This video is making the rounds all throughout social media. If you've been on Facebook, Twitter, any social media, you've seen this video make the rounds. I want to play it in full for you. What it is a compilation, a very cohesive, and I don't know if there are any more clips out there, is what I'm saying. This is a long compilation of how people in your lefty side of lefty media, mainstream legacy media, reacted to people not getting a vaccine that wasn't going to help anybody else but them. Now, I've said this on the show before, I'm not a vaccine denier. If you want to get it, go for it. I don't care. That's fine. But we all knew pretty early on, everybody knew that it wasn't going to stop the spread. It was only going to mitigate your reaction to getting COVID. Nevertheless, people continued to push this idea of if you get the shot, you will not spread it, which turned out to be not true. And a lot of people knew that it wasn't true very, very early on. And yet they still went on TV and said a bunch of stuff like this. Now, I'll warn you, this is long, but it's unbelievably comprehensive. And what I would say, what I would encourage, and what I would ask you to do is not forget how badly a lot of us were treated, especially when they knew what they were saying is wrong. Check it out.
You are the unvaccinated. You are the problem. It is the unvaccinated who are the problem, period, end of story.
The only people that you can blame, this isn't shaming, this is the truth. Maybe they should be shamed, are the unvaccinated.
It's time to start blaming the unvaccinated folks, not the regular folks.
Anyone you came into contact with will blame you, as will the rest of us who have done the right thing by getting vaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
I think it's time to get our moral house in order, Anderson. It's the unvaccinated who are the threat.
All of us vaccinated folks are going to start wearing masks to protect the unvaccinated folks. It's called a Christian value.
You're basically punishing the vaccinated for the sins of the unvaccinated.
People are not behaving honorably. The unvaccinated are basically saying, well, it's open season for me. I can do whatever I want as well.
The unvaccinated are basically beating their breasts and running around the country saying, we don't care, we're living free and so forth.
We've been patient. but our patience is wearing thin.
The unvaccinated, a group that includes children and people acting like children. And the rest of us are starting to get pissed off.
The vaccinated feel the unvaccinated are making me upset or angry.
This is not about freedom or personal choice.
Well, my freedom is being kind of disturbed here. No, screw your freedom.
The other day, Howard Stern weighed in with a much different approach. Take a look.
When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say, it's mandatory to get vaccinated? Their freedom.
But you're treading on our freedom and you're making other people sick, and really you're killing other people.
The anti-vaxxers, they seem to have a thing for death and home remedies.
The anti-maskers turned anti-vaxxers are not just putting their own lives at risk. If that was the issue, we could just say that we can watch them compete to win place or show in the Darwin Awards.
We have to start doing things for the greater good of society and not for idiots who think that they can do their own research.
And don't get me started on the lunatics who won't take any of the COVID vaccines.
Life is too short to be an ass. Life is way too short to be ignorant of the promise of something that is helping people worldwide.
Maybe you're doing it because you're disconnected or disorganized. Maybe you have some sympathetic psychological reasons, but maybe you're just being antisocial.
Oh, you can't shame them. You can't call them stupid. You can't call them silly. Yes, they are.
Those who are not vaccinated will end up paying the price.
The unvaccinated should be taxed. They should pay more for health care.
We need to start looking at the choice to remain unvaccinated the same as we look at driving while intoxicated.
We're going to see, and I've said, almost two types of America.
Dr. Fauci said that if hospitals get any more overcrowded, they're going to have to make some very tough choices about who gets an ICU bed. That choice doesn't seem so tough to me. Vaccinated person having a heart attack? Yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo? Rest in peace, Wheezy.
Pointing back to the unvaccinated who are really creating a problem in this country, every death that we are seeing from COVID could have been prevented.
Literally, the only people dying are the unvaccinated. And for those of you spreading misinformation, shame on you.
All right. So I don't feel like I need to say much. I think that video speaks for itself. That's just how a lot of your legacy media think about the people that, I don't know, want to do their own thing. It's fine. Now, one thing I would like to say / point out is that they made such a huge deal of personal decisions that didn't really have any sort of consequence other than, I don't know, if you wanted it, great. If you didn't want it, great. It didn't stop the spread at all. It didn't benefit the greater good of society. The hospital beds were never over capacity to the point where you couldn't accept a kid with a broken arm, as some people would say. None of that was true. But on the other side of things, there are so many we care policy decisions being made that do impact your life. Without going into great deal to sound like I'm complaining about it, the healthcare system that my wife and I participate in is not awesome. And a lot of that has to do with the quote-unquote Affordable Care Act that made healthcare more expensive for 90% of people in this country. I don't know those actual statistics, but it made healthcare substantially more expensive for most people while providing bad healthcare to like 3% of the population. The Inflation Reduction Act, which everybody says, yay, hooray, actually affected your life. It made inflation go up further. So what I'm trying to say here is that all of this complaining that these people did on the media, in the media and on their platforms and all that sort of stuff, didn't actually have an effect on anybody's life. That decision. They're shaming you into a decision that didn't impact anything other than your own life. This is vaccine works, that's notwithstanding. Whether or not it benefited you, whether or not it did, I don't care. But at the end of the day, it didn't actually have an impact, and that's what they made the biggest deal about. While on the other hand, There are so many policies that just get pushed through that nobody cares about. And if they do, they just kind of turn a blind eye to it, that actually affect you in your daily life. More specifically, usually your wallet. And in a lot of cases, your safety if you live in one of those super blue enclaves that are just trying to help people. So I think what I'm really trying to say is that tyranny and dictatorship often come in the form of we're here to help. And I would hope that the American people fight against it as much as they possibly can if ever there's a situation like this brought up again. There's some comments here about the vaccine that I'm not going to get into. But let's see. Anything? Oh, here we go. This is actually kind of interesting. Jeff said, I think the vaccine's mutated COVID and made it worse, right? He didn't say right, but yeah, that's another good thing. There's actually some research on that too. That's we won't dig into that right now, but a lot of people said, well, the COVID mutated around the vaccines, and that's why you need all the quote unquote boosters and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, maybe that's it. Don said, still lying. When will the media ever learn we no longer believe anything they say? Yeah. So the other thing too is nobody watches cable news, just in terms of overall viewership. Relative to the population, nobody watches cable news, but it does have a huge influence in politics, especially at the federal government level. So for that, we should pay attention to what's going on and fight back against it so that they don't influence our lives in ways that we don't want to have happen. So there's that. Before we go, this is actually kind of interesting. Maybe we'll hit more on this tomorrow. But Karen brought up the fact that a former Marine that was arrested in New York City has raised $2 million, which is a little good news. Yeah, so that the guy who subdued, and again, I'm not the judge of whether or not it was too much, but all of the evidence would indicate that the people helping him hold the crazy homeless guy down on the subway, it would indicate that, yeah, other people thought he was a threat too. Nobody was helping the guy get out of the chokehold. And again, right or wrong, somebody will decide that in the future. But all the evidence looks to be that, yeah, a bunch of the other people thought that that was a good idea, including a myriad of races. So, but that kid who was arrested and charged with manslaughter, I believe, has raised like $2 million for his defense fund. So I guess that's a little good news, Karen. Thanks. But that'll do it for us today. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media accounts. Just type in JOPOB. You'll be able to find me. A lot of stuff to get to tomorrow. There's a really interesting piece in the Wall Street Journal about the algorithms and TikTok. So maybe we'll get into that tomorrow. Also, crime in San Francisco. Dave Chappelle, I guess, laid into the city. He did a pop-up stand-up show in San Francisco and said, holy cow, what the hell happened to this place? That, among many other videos / policies going on in the formerly great city in the Golden State. We'll get to all of that tomorrow. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. We will see you tomorrow, same time, same place. God bless America.